So Museum Wines was founded actually 22 years ago, late 2003, early 2004. I wasn't part of the business then, it was set up by someone else, almost by accident. He had a pub called the Museum Inn, which was in Farnham in Dorset, and it was at the sort of the start of the gastro pub phenomenon. So he actually started supplying other local pubs because there was this demand for better quality wine, which he was bringing in anyway for his own business. We've now grown beyond just selling to local pubs. We now count people like the Wine Society and Laithwaites as customers of ours, but we still supply local pubs in Salisbury, in Dorset, from where we used to be based, but we have customers from Cornwall to North Yorkshire. Anyone and everyone. So we used to actually supply the Audi dealership in Poole, who were the largest independent Audi dealership in the UK. So they had a standing order for 180 bottles of wine a month, and every time someone bought a new Audi, they got a bottle of wine from us. So I say literally any way of getting wine to the end consumer, we've pretty much got it covered. So predominantly it is trade. 55 to 60% of our revenue each month comes from supplying the trade, and that is, as I said, very big, well-known household companies, smaller pubs, owner-operator pubs. Often not. We do a couple of groups, but again, smaller independent owner-operator groups. Good wine shop, people that sell online only, like Vincognito. On trade, so people like Kudu, Royal Oak at Watcott in Oxfordshire, which is a Michelin-star restaurant, but a pub as well. We used to have a supply Tenaya Wine, which is a wine shop in Sheffield, and the Orange Bird, which is a South African owned restaurant on the same road as them in Sheffield. We have this wine shop, as you can see, where people can come in and buy from the shelves, bottles or boxes. I always say you can buy a bottle, a box or a bootload, because we've got parking right outside the door. The products, if you're in Majestic, you're not really a small boutique artisan producer anymore. You're supplying 220 wine warehouses. You need to be producing a decent amount of stock, a large amount of stock. Whereas here, so that wine, for example, he makes 6,000 bottles. We get an allocation of about a third of that. So it's tiny production. 6,000 bottles might sound a lot, but compare it to 9 million bottles of Dom Perignon, which are produced every year by Meriton Chandon. 6,000 is tiny. We offer the customers that sort of the level of product knowledge that typically only independents have, and passion. Having been in Dorset previously with a very traditional, often older customer base, they want a picture of a chateau on the label. They're buying Burgundy, Bordeaux with a more traditional label, often not getting as good value for money, because as we all know, those wines don't typically offer tremendous value for money, whereas South Africa does, and Spain actually, I would say. And I think in terms of branding, we have noticed that. I think Van Hunks is a good example. That is the Van Hunks label, which has Jan Van Hunks smoking a pipe in front of Table Mountain. And we've had Cap Classiques in the past, which are more traditionally branded with the traditional champagne style neck label. They've sold well to private clients, to retail customers, because we're there to sell it. But in the on-trade, in the off-trade, where sometimes it's on a shelf, this label at 25 quid, I think, draws the eye more of a younger consumer. If they're looking for something traditionally branded, they're probably looking for champagne. And I think that speaks to a different audience who are looking for something of that style, but of a more sort of unique, modern, progressively approach to it. And it works really well, and we were selling a lot of it as a result. I think we've been considering it for a while. The previous system, if you could call it a system, that we had in place was somewhat archaic. So we were using Zero for event inventory, but where it wasn't working was, so in the shop we had something called Shopwave, which was a free POS which we'd used for 8 years. Then internet was going through, e-commerce sales were going through WooCommerce. We were supposed to manually adjust it on Xero every time you made a sale, or at the end of the day on in the shop or online, but invariably if you're busy, small business, small team, often that gets neglected and I'll do it later. So the stock position was not always correct, and we would do a stock take and then it would take an enormous amount of effort to correct everything manually. And from what we saw looking at several other platforms, I think we looked at 4 or 5 total, including WineHub. I think we definitely made the right decision, and it's definitely one we haven't regretted. With Lightspeed integrating into Woo, which goes into the hub, every time a sale goes through this till, it appears on WineHub under the sales orders. Same with the website. When someone buys wine online, that appears on WineHub and the stock position decreases accordingly. So it's made everything a lot smoother, a lot more efficient, reduced stress and manual labour, which is a very happy occasion. Everything was done manually. So now if I raise a purchase order for a new product, that goes on to into our inventory on WineHub, and then when we put in all the pertinent details, alcohol, bottle shot, description, price, etc., that populates it onto WooCommerce. Previously, you would have to add that product into a purchase order, which would then just exist on Xero. You would then have to manually add that product into WooCommerce, so it wouldn't populate itself automatically. It would be another manual process. So essentially you're doubling up, you're doing everything twice or sometimes thrice because of the retail POS as well. And then you would just manually put in how many bottles you had. So it was very much doing everything manually. So you'd have to put the product onto Shopwave once and then onto WooCommerce again. So sometimes you were doing these things 2 or 3 times. As the business grows, we are now set up to allow it to grow, whereas a lot of businesses stick with the old system, which might be a bit clunky but works for now, and then as they grow, the clunks become more apparent. And then maybe you're trying to operate with a larger customer base and bigger, more demanding clients, and there are things that are not working as well because of an older, less efficient system. Whereas I think now as the business grows, we're definitely set up to meet any challenges that that we need to. And also one of the other things is how much time it saves in terms of pre-advices and things like that. WineHub produces a pre-advice CSV that by a click of a button sends them everything they need. They will still ask us to do a product code, but then it's a 2-minute job rather than an hour's long data entry. So there's things like that are added benefits. We had a period of time where I didn't have any support staff, and I don't think I could have done it on my own if we didn't have WineHub already in place, because there would have been too much administrative tasks that needed doing that WineHub automates. As much as we like employing people and being an employer in the local community, if you are a business which is a one-man band or all runs on a small team, it can automate a lot of those boring processes which take time, but that time isn't spent producing much profit or revenue for the business. So then time is one of those things which if it's all being done and it saves you an hour a day, and that hour in a day can be spent selling wine, then it just makes the business more efficient. I would say that they should move forward with WineHub with urgency. We looked at a number of other systems, and some of them look like they've been designed 25 years ago and not updated. Maybe they have and just not updated. And WineHub is really nice to use. It's easy to use. It's user friendly. I've trained up various members of staff, several members of staff, to use WineHub, and it's easy for me to show someone what to do, how to do it. They pick it up quickly. I think it's a very user friendly system. The interface is nice and modern and works, and it's obviously I use it on a daily basis, and it's very easy to get to grips with, and you can normally figure something out. And if you can't figure it out, then the support system, you raise a ticket or send an email, you'll get an answer very quickly, and normally a helpful one. Yeah, it's definitely been a massive benefit to our business.